Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Balaba Girivardhari. Gopijana Balaba Girivardhari. Yashodanandan Brajadana Lanjana. Yashodanandana Brajadana Ranjana. Yamunatila Vanachari. Yamunatila Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Balaba Girivardhari. Gopijana Balaba Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajadana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajadana Ranjana. Yamunatila Vanachari. Yamunatila Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Astatar Sarashishimad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Astatar Sarashishimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Anant Koti Vaishnavinda Ki. Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Vimsaka Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Veda Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktabinda Ki. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki. Vrindavandam Ki. Navarit Maya Pudam Ki. Jagannath Puridam Ki. Ganga Maya Ki. Yamuna Maya Ki. Talasi Devi Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Samaveda Bhaktabinda Ki. Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Glories to Shishi Guru and Gauranga. So reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 12, Dhruva Maharaj goes back to Godhead. We're given two verses today, 46 and 47. So these are the second two. Thank you. The second and third of the three benediction verses at the end of the pastime. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shrutva etat shradaya abhikshnam ashuta priya chestitam bhavet bhakti bhagavati yaya syat klesha sankshaya. Shrutva chada yabhikshnam achyuta priya chestitam bhaved bhaktir bhagavati yaya shat klesha sankshaya. Shrutva tat shradaya bhikshnam achyuta priya chestitam bhaved bhaktir bhagavati yaya syat klesha sankshaya. Shrutva tat shradaya bhikshnam achyuta priya chestitam bhavet bhaktir bhagavati yaya syat klesha sankshaya. Please chant. Shrutva tat shradaya bhikshnam achyuta priya chestitam bhaved bhaktir bhagavati yaya syat klesha sankshaya. Shrutva tat shradaya bhikshnam achyuta priya chestitam bhaved bhaktir bhagavati yaya syat klesha sankshaya. Shrutva tat shradaya bhikshnam achyuta priya chestitam bhaved bhaktir bhagavati yaya syat klesha sankshaya. Shrutva tat shradaya bhikshnam achyuta priya chestitam Bhave Bhakti Bhagavati Yashat Klesa Samshaya. Anybody else want to chant? Anyone? Shrutai Tat Shariya Bhikshnam Achyuta Priya Chestitam Bhave Bhaktir Bhagavati Yashat Klesa Samshaya. Anybody else want to chant? Shrutai Tat Shariya Bhikshnam Achyuta Priya Chestitam Bhave Bhaktir Bhagavati Yashat Klesa Samshaya. Anybody else want to chant? Shrutai Shariya Bhikshnam Achyuta Priya Chestitam Bhave Bhaktir Bhagavati Yashat Klesa Samshaya. Anybody else want to chant? I think we got one back there, didn't chant? Guess not. So, Archita reminds us that Prabhupada let many people chant. Some Bhagavatam speakers limit it to 2 guys and 1 lady, but that's not actually Prabhupada's standard. So, Prabhupada liked people to chant it 10 or 15 times, because the more you hear it, the more you become purified, and you may actually remember the verse if you chant it enough. Shrutva, by hearing, etat, this, shradaya, with faith, abhikshnam, repeatedly, achyuta, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, priya, dear, chestitam, activities, bhavet, develops, bhaktihi, devotion, bhagavati, under the Supreme Personality of Godhead, yaya, by which, shat, must be, klesha, of miseries, sangshayaha, complete diminution. Translation: anyone who hears the narration of Dhruva Maharaj and who repeatedly tries with faith and devotion to understand his pure character attains the pure devotional platform and executes pure devotional service. By such activities, one can diminish the 3-fold miserable conditions of material life. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Here the word achyuta priya is very significant. Dhruva Maharaj's character and reputation are great because he is dear to achyuta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Lord are pleasing to hear, hearing about His devotees who are very dear to the Supreme Person is also pleasing and potent. If one simply reads over and over again about Dhruva Maharaj, by hearing and reading this chapter, one can attain the highest perfection of life in any way he desires. Most importantly, he gets the chance to become a great devotee. Become a great devotee means to finish all miserable conditions of materialistic life. Jnana-timirandasya gyananjana shlakaya chakshurumilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna-prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Bhacharini Nirvisesha Shunivari Paschatya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Veda Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Anjakalpatubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhyacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. So I'll try to say a few things about the different points that Srila Prabhupada makes in the purport of this verse and then go on to the next verse. Prabhupada starts out by saying here the word Achyuta Priya is very significant. Two of his character and reputation are great because he's very dear to Achyuta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, if you search through the folio many times, Prabhupada gives a definition of the word Achyuta. Usually he says it means infallible or never falling down. So, Krishna is always in his transcendental position, and he's infallible. He's infallible at reciprocating the love of his devotees, and therefore his devotees are very attached to him. And then the devotees are very dear to the Lord because of their devotional service. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna advises everyone to engage in devotional service, but in human society there are maybe 7-8 billion people, so how many people are actually engaging in devotional service according to Krishna's direction? Practically nobody. Maybe just a few thousand people, maybe. So, and the people who actually take Krishna's words seriously and apply them in their life, they're very, very dear to Krishna. Krishna is speaking the Bhagavad Gita to benefit everyone, and he wants to benefit everyone, but not everyone is accepting his good advice, and therefore they're missing out on the ecstasy of devotional service. But the people who actually take him seriously, Krishna is very, very happy about, and he's very enthusiastic to reciprocate with them. Prabhupada continues, as the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Lord are pleasing to hearing about his devotees who are very dear to the Supreme Person is also pleasing and potent. So the devotees, because they're engaged in devotional service, they're also on the same transcendental platform as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore the activities of the devotees are also transcendental. There's a nice verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Diksha kale bhakti kara atma samarpana se kale krishnatare kare atma sama. At the time of initiation, when a devotee fully surrenders unto the service of the Lord, Krishna accepts him to be as good as himself. So that's pretty amazing. As soon as you get initiated, Krishna considers your body to be as transcendental as his. Because instead of acting according to your imagination, you're acting according to Krishna's direction, received from the Guru. So you're actually acting on the transcendental platform, and you're transcendentally situated, and your activities of devotional service are actually transcendental. Another evidence that the devotees are not, activities aren't ordinary is from Bhagavad Gita. There's a nice verse: Namam karmani limpanti, name karma pale spriha, idimam yobi janati, karma bi nasabadite. Krishna says, there's no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruit of reactions of work. So anyone who can understand that Krishna's activities are transcendental, he also becomes transcendental. If people can understand that Krishna's not getting karma for the different things he does, they don't get karma for the things they do. So the devotees are like that. They understand the truth about Krishna, and therefore they're also transcendental. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, many places, Krishnadas Kaviraj, he lists, there's just lists of different devotees of Lord Chaitanya. And he says regarding, one point is where he's talking about all the branches of the Chaitanya tree, all the followers of Lord Chaitanya and their followers, and it's like a great tree. There's a branch from Nityananda and a branch from Advaita and then all their followers. And so he remarks, these branches and sub-branches of devotees are innumerable and unlimited. Who can count them? For my personal purification, I shall try to enumerate only the most prominent among them. So just talking about the devotees of the Lord, we actually become purified. And therefore, if we study the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj over and over, as we study it, we become more and more purified, because his activities are actually transcendental. They're all in relationship with Krishna. If one simply reads over and over about Dhruva Maharaj by hearing and reading this chapter, one can attain the highest perfection of life in any way he desires. Most importantly, he gets the chance to become a great devotee. As far as hearing about Dhruva Maharaj over and over, actually Lord Chaitanya taught that by his example. Every day when he was in Jagannath Puri, he would go to the garden of the Tota Gopinath temple and have Gadadhar Pandit read to him from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And he liked the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj and of Prahlad Maharaj, and he would have the Gadadhar Pandit read them over and over again, like 100 times, because he liked them so much. And the Gadadhar Pandit was experiencing so much transcendental ecstasy from reading the Bhagavatam to Lord Chaitanya that his tears actually damaged the book, and at a certain point it was unusable. So Lord Chaitanya himself taught of the value of hearing the pastimes of Dhruva repeatedly. To become a great devotee means to finish all miserable conditions of materialistic life. One way, of course, we can see this is if we become a great devotee, then we get to go back to Godhead, and then there's no more birth, no more death, no more disease, no more old age. And even if we don't make it all the way back to Godhead, there's this quote from the Nectar of Devotion. In the Narada Pancharatna, Lord Shiva therefore tells Parvati, "My dear Supreme Goddess, you may know from me that any person who's developed the ecstasy of love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead and who's always merged in transcendental bliss on account of this love cannot even perceive the material distress or happiness coming from the body or mind." So a devotee on the highest platform of love of God, Krishna Prema, he doesn't actually experience the miseries of the body even while in this world. It's said about Srila Prabhupada that when he was toward the tail end of his life, he was so emaciated because he wasn't eating that it was practically, his skin was practically touching his bones, and the doctors said that like any ordinary person in that condition would be experiencing intolerable pain, but it wasn't. But Prabhupada was so transcendently situated, he wasn't disturbed at all. So there's a few thoughts on some of the points Prabhupada made in that purport. Does anybody have any questions or comments or realizations they'd like to share before we go on to the next verse in purport? Yes? Yeah, they're completely transcendental, and they give pleasure to the Lord. The whole goal of the devotional service is, of course, to give pleasure to the Lord. And when he is reminded of his devotees, it gives him great pleasure because he has great affection for them. So when Krishna in the heart sees us hearing the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj, he thinks about Dhruva Maharaj and what an amazing devotee he was, and how in just 6 months at the age of 5 he actually attained perfection, and the Lord feels happy to be remembering this amazing soul and pleased that we're reminding him of that great soul. So I think my Guru Maharaj must be very, very pleasing to the Lord, because he wrote 16 books about Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada was such a special person that without the assistance of any of his contemporaries, he spread the chanting of the whole name all over the world, and spread the Bhagavad Gita all over the world, and Srimad Bhagavatam. So he's inconceivably dear to the Lord. So just read 47. Atvam ichatam tirtam shotu shilada yoguna yatra tejas ta ichunam mano yatra manashvinam. Anyone who hears the narration of Dhruva Maharaj acquires exalted qualities like him. For anyone who desires greatness, prowess, or influence hears the process by which to attain them. And for thoughtful men who want adoration, here's the proper means. Report by Srila Prabhupada. In the world, everyone's after profit, respectability, and reputation. Everyone wants the supreme exalted position. And everyone wants to hear about the great qualities of exalted persons. All ambitions which are desirable for great persons can be fulfilled simply by reading and understanding the narration of Dhruva Maharaj's activities. So, by how we can attain all things by hearing about Dhruva Maharaj's activities can be understood in different ways. By hearing about Dhruva Maharaj's activities, we're actually engaging in devotional service, Shravanam, by hearing about the activities of a great devotee. And by engaging in devotional service, we actually accomplish everything that we could accomplish by doing other things. Basically, there's a verse that goes, Akama sarva kama va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusam param. The person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the Personality of Godhead. So Dhruva himself, he had an amazing material desire. He wanted to have a kingdom greater than his great-grandfather, which is practically impossible, but not impossible for Krishna. And we may have all kinds of desires, like Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport, profit, respectability, and reputation. But one doesn't actually have to endeavor separately for these, because if one engages in devotional service, he pleases the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then whatever one's desire is, it can be fulfilled by the grace of the Lord. So, because the Lord is inclined to fulfill the desires of his devotees. So, but an important lesson to be learned from the Dhruva Maharaj Leela is, if we have material desires, then it'll delay our return back to Godhead, because we'll have to stay in the material world to enjoy these things that we pestered the Lord for. Whereas if we are just serving the Lord, then we can go to the spiritual kingdom where all they do is serve the Lord. Therefore, it's all stressed that the devotional service be without any extra desire. But there's all kinds of, because that's a very high stage to attain, and people are not at that level, there's different verses that promise lesser benedictions for people to motivate them to perform the devotional service. Because if they do perform the devotional service, they'll get those things fulfilled, and ultimately they'll go back to Godhead. There's a nice verse telling how everything is accomplished by devotional service in the end of the 8th chapter, which is entitled "Attaining the Supreme." Edushu yageshu tapasu chaivadaneshu yat punyam pala parishtam tedi tat sarvamidam viditva yogi pramstanam upaiti chadyam. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing devotional service, he attains all these, and at the end, he reaches the supreme eternal abode. So, by hearing the narration of Dhruva Maharaj, we're performing Shravanam, one of the items of bhakti, hearing about the Lord and His pure devotee, and by the power of devotional service, any desire we have can be fulfilled. Regarding the good qualities of one engaged in devotional service, there's a nice verse. I think I haven't perfectly memorized the translations. Look it up so I don't miss any of the details. Let's see here. Those Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavata Kinchana. Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavata Kinchana. Sarvaganas Tacha Samasate Sura. Rava Bhaktasya Kata Mahan Guna Manoro Sati Daivatomahi. All the demigods and their exalted qualities, such as religion, knowledge, and renunciation, become manifest in the body of one who has developed unalloyed devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. On the other hand, a person devoid of devotional service and engaged in material activities has no good qualities. Even if he's adept at the practice of mystic yoga or the honest endeavor of maintaining his family and relatives, he must be driven by his own mental speculations and must engage in the service of the Lord's illusory energy. How can there be any good qualities in such a man? So the reason why Dhruva Maharaj had all these amazing qualities is because his heart became completely purified by engaging in the devotional service of the Lord. And therefore these 26 qualities of the devotee which are actually manifest, which actually exist within everyone's heart, became fully manifest. And therefore he has a very exalted character. And by glorifying his exalted character, we can also have an exalted character. There's an analogy that Prabhupada would use of the iron rod in the fire. So, fire can be compared to the fire of devotional service. And Krishna and devotional service to Krishna is considered non-different, and it's all Sat Chit Ananda, devotion. Krishna is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and his devotional service is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. And when we engage in his devotional service, we come up to that spiritual platform of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. So the analogy is that an iron rod is cold and dark, but if you put it in a fire which is hot and blazing and glowing, and it stays there long enough, it gets hotter and hotter, and it gets to the point where it's glowing red hot and then white hot, and it's also becomes, its temperature increases. So originally it started out as being cold and dark, but at the end it's illuminating and hot. So we start out being in a situation of non-eternity, non-bliss, and ignorance. And by being in the fire of devotional service, we come up to the platform of being spiritually illuminated and spiritually joyful, and in an eternal, unchanging spiritual position, not affected by the material qualities which surround our soul in this world. So everything can be accomplished by hearing the pastimes of the Dhruva Maharaj, because it puts us in touch with the spiritual energy which purifies us. And when we come to Krishna consciousness, we're engaged in 100% material activities. And by the time of our next death, we want to attain the point of 100% devotional activities. And we can go to the spiritual world where they perform 100% devotional activities. So as time goes on, we are trying to decrease our sense gratification and increase our devotional service. And we don't have to try so much to decrease our sense gratification, because if we just increase our devotional service, we won't have time for sense gratification. So it'll automatically decrease. So that's the secret of, that's why the devotional service is a very recommended process, because it purifies us by the performance of it, and we automatically become free from the material association. There's that nice verse, Srinvatam Svakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Ridiyanta Story Bhadrani Vidinoti Satam. Lord Sri Krishna, the super personality of God in the super soul in everyone's heart, cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who's developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So, by hearing the Dhruva Maharaj narration, which is in relationship with the Supreme Lord, our heart becomes purified. Therefore, Prabhupada recommended we have classes morning and evening where we hear of the pastimes and the instructions of the personality of Godhead, and we become steadily purified. And therefore, it's always recommended that we go to Bhagavatam class, and if we can't go to Bhagavatam class, that we hear a class or do some reading at some time every day. So we continue to get purified, because just living in the material world, we're becoming polluted. There's a lot of people who vibrate mundane sound, especially if you ride the subway, you're inundated with all kinds of mundane sound. So I think of it as like people throwing dirt at you, They're throwing auditory dirt, and it's polluting our soul. So we have to vibrate divine sound. We have to hear divine sound that always purify us from the contamination which people are throwing at us at every moment. So, any questions or comments?
Remembering, as you were speaking about how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so absorbed in hearing Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj sections from Gadadhar Pandit, and it was at the time when Srinivasa Acharya, he came to meet Gadadhar Pandit to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. That time when he opened the Bhagavatam was literally wiped out completely because of the tears of Gadadhar Pandit. And he asked that if you want to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, get a copy. And then he went all the way back to Mayapur, and made it right. He had to write everything. And then by the time he came, Gadadhar Pandit left this world. And, that time he was feeling a great amount of separation from Gadadhar Pandit. So I just remembering how it is so ecstatic to hear the glories of Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj again and again. And hearing about pure devotees is so amazing, so purifying, that just by hearing about these qualities of Prabhupada, or anyone who has practiced devotional service for a long time, when we hear, we also get those qualities very easily. We need not endeavor to get any such qualities, but if we just keep hearing about them, then it's very very easy that we can inculcate all those qualities very easily. So hearing about Dhruv Maharaj, hearing about Prahlad Maharaj, or Srila Prabhupada, or his devotees, they are there who are practicing for a very long time. When we hear it, gives a great amount of inspiration and great amount of joy to us. And then seeing that, again, Krishna is very pleased that you are taking interest in hearing about his devotees. Because as Krishna also says that, devotee is very dear to me. He lies within my heart. So anyone who is trying to hear about Krishna or his to hear about his devotees is trying to please Krishna, because Krishna devotees are residing in his heart. So I was just contemplating while you were speaking these points. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's a quote in the Adi Purana where Krishna tells Arjuna that someone who claims to be my devotee is not my devotee, but one who's devoted to my devotee, he's my actual devotee. Yeah. And it's true, like when we think, like, sometimes I go out and I chant in public alone, and sometimes it's austere, but I think about how Prabhupada got on that boat alone, in his late 60s, coming to a place where he didn't really know anybody, and with this mission of getting people to completely change their life by giving up sinful activities. I mean, that's my struggle being out there and just tolerating a little bit of the ignorance of the people is very insignificant compared to Prabhupada's 30-day voyage and 2 heart attacks, struggling without assistance in New York. In the scripture we hear about the standard of pure devotional service, and it seems like impossible that anybody could attain that, but the existence of the devotees in society gives us faith that it's actually possible to attain a high level of Krishna consciousness. And when people had Prabhupada's personal association, they could see, yeah, it's actually possible to completely dedicate your life to Krishna, and then they became inspired to do so. So the role that the pure devotees play is absolutely essential, because otherwise people would read the scriptures and they would think, who can possibly do this? It's completely impractical to be so dedicated to the Supreme Lord. But the devotees, they show by their example of complete dedication that the Lord is worth being completely dedicated to. And like Prabhupada talks about, like in one purport in the Bhagavad Gita, he says that the devotee doesn't have to worry about how to keep body and soul together. Krishna will see to that. So that sounds like, a big leap of faith, but that's Prabhupada lived that way, To spread his Krishna consciousness movement around the world, he needed thousands of people and millions of dollars, but he just had a handful of people at the storefront, and he just had 200 books that he was trying to sell at $20 for the set of 3, so that's not anywhere near enough money to spread Krishna consciousness around the world, but Krishna supplied everything he needed. He supplied him people, he supplied him money, but he just remained fixed in his chanting and giving lectures on the philosophy and doing his translation, and Krishna sent everything he needed.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. You have a question or a comment or a realization?
Yeah. I wanted to comment on like the power of hearing. I remembered reading the Krishna book where it talks about Rukmini and how Rukmini, she fell in love with Krishna simply just by hearing about his activities in Vrindavan. And he's like, that's it. I don't want no one other man. This is my husband. And she did it. She wrote a letter with her tears trying to tell him, like, I want to marry you. And just, she hadn't even seen him. She just heard about Krishna. He's like, I'm sold,
Yeah, I just heard from Narada Muni who would come there, and Krishna was so reciprocal that when the Brahmana came with the message from Queen or Princess Rukmini, he was saying, "Oh, I'm glad to hear that." I also want to marry her, and indeed, some nights I can't sleep properly because she's on my mind, So, he perfectly reciprocated her feelings of affection for him. Everyone is looking for somebody to perfectly reciprocate their affection for them, but it's not very often found in this world. When, like we're saying that Krishna is Achyuta, he can infallibly reciprocate our affection. Some people, they can't reciprocate with us because they don't really understand what we really need, and then some people, they don't have the resources to reciprocate with us. But Krishna has, because he's omniscient, he can perfectly understand our mind, and because he has all resources are under his control, he has no limitation in his ability to reciprocate. So it actually makes a lot of sense to dedicate ourselves to this very reciprocal personality who's inclined to us. We hear that he's more inclined to us than we are to him, that if we take one step toward Krishna, Krishna takes 10 steps toward us. So it's described in, Krishna says in 4:11, Etamam prapadyante tamstataiva bhajamiha mama vartmanu manushi parasarvasa. As they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows in my path in all respects. So, because he reciprocates as we surrender, so that the best thing would be to surrender completely, then we get the complete reciprocation. So, but due to our attachments, in the beginning we're not able to do that. But the more and more we hear about the great value in performing devotional service, the more we become motivated to surrender more, and then we experience more of Krishna's reciprocation. So then we might be inspired to surrender more. So ideally, it can be a dynamic of gradually increasing our surrender. Because we surrender a little bit, we get some realization, so we surrender more, and we get more realization, so we surrender more, and then ultimately we surrender completely, and we get the complete realization. So so the problem is when we stop surrendering. We've decided, we make a deal with Krishna. Okay, I've done as much as I'm going to do for you, Krishna. And it doesn't progress beyond that. But if we keep performing the devotional service day after day, we become purified, and our ability to surrender increases because we become purified. Because devotional service is actually purifying. So the secret of success in devotional service is to not quit, and then ultimately attain success, because we have a limited amount of material contamination, and it's always being dissolved by the devotional service. It's just a matter of time before it's gone. As long as we don't plug the fan back in and start things up again. We may have a lot of material contamination, but it's not so much that it can't be all wiped out by the devotional service, because the devotional service is so powerful. So that's That's really, we just have to keep ourselves in the association of devotees, and therefore it's recommended we cultivate the qualities of humility and tolerance, because if we're sufficiently humble and tolerant, it's very easy to be in the association of devotees. But if we're proud and intolerant, then we'll find faults with the devotees or with the situation, and then we'll decide to go to some other situation which is less devotional, and then we'll go backwards. We won't continue to progress. But if we stay in the association of the devotees, they always remind us to get up early, to chant Hare Krishna, to hear Srimad Bhagavatam class. They always remind us to engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Whereas if we associate with the materialists, then their bhava is that you can have a perfectly good life without performing activities of devotion to God. They just, it's not part of their worldview, and you get caught up in that illusory conception of life, thinking that it's not important or not required or not valuable. Therefore, it's interesting in the association with materialistic peoples, really condemned in both the two verses of the Nectar of Instruction, both 2 and 3. Verse 2 lists the things that are bad for devotional service. Atyahar prayasischa bhajalpaniya magraha janasanga shaloyam cha. So janasanga, it's something to be rejected, And then when in the list of things you're supposed to do, usan nishchayardaya tatat karma paravartana, Sangha Tyagat Satovarte. Sangha Tyagat, you're supposed to reject the materialistic people. So rejection of the materialistic people is listed in both lists, because it's such an important thing to do. It's the only thing he mentions twice there. so and then Lord Chaitanya, when he's describing the characteristics of a Vaishnava, that he rejects atsat sangha. Yeah. So we have to reject the asat sangha. And we may be subjected to it because when we go outside, but we don't have to let it enter into our heart, the asat sangha. By fixing our mind on our devotional purpose. When we're out in the society, we're out there for a particular reason. We're going on Harinam, we're picking up something at the shop to offer to Krishna. Just focus on what we're supposed to be doing and tune out the materialistic energy around us. We can chant Hare Krishna, and if we can't chant Hare Krishna due to the circumstances, we can chant Hare Krishna in our mind. There's a Leela where Satsuru Maharaj is asked, when people at the welfare office are saying all these nonsense things, and can we chant Hare Krishna in our mind? And he said yes. Not only are the people in the welfare office talking nonsense things, but even the greatest philosophers are talking nonsense things. But we can chant Hare Krishna in our mind when we're surrounded by non-devotional activities, and it's inappropriate to chant Hare Krishna out loud. Sometimes people blast some karmi music on the subway, So I have some devotional music on my computer, so I just crank up my devotional music so I don't have to listen to it. And that way the people around me get some devotional benefit too. Well, it's practically 9 o'clock, so we could probably get away with ending. Does anybody have any final questions or comments? Yes?
I just love this, the point you mentioned that we have more attachments. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 4:11, ye yathamam prabodyanti tamstasave vajayam. We know, like we understand, we have to surrender, but at the same time we have attachment. So you explained it clearly that the more and more we hear, we experience Krishna's reciprocation. And that helps as an encouragement, and then we surrender more. So we start by hearing, and even though we have a lot of attachments.
Yeah, Prabhupada recommends that we develop an attachment for at least one of the 9 items of devotional service that's so strong that it can kick out our material attachments. So some people it may be deity worship, some people it may be hearing, some people it may be chanting. Some people may like to do active service, but we try to cultivate an attachment for one of these positive items of devotional service. Like I like to take videos of the Harinams, and sometimes I edit the videos on the subway, and of all the things I do on the subway, it's the most absorbing thing. I completely tune out. Sometimes I almost miss my station because I'm so absorbed in it, but it's all, it's just Harinam videos, so it's all, Krishna sound, but it really focuses my mind, and I just forget about the crazy subway atmosphere. We have to find some devotional thing that completely absorb our mind, and then we're liberated from the material condition. Yeah. So we wish everyone well in their endeavor in this way. And the great thing about devotional service is no matter how difficult it becomes, we can always pray to Krishna, and things will improve sooner or later. Usually sooner. Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Mahaprasadam Ki